President Robinson, you are pushing for an approach to development that safeguards the rights of the most vulnerable. What partnerships will be important to create that change?
I think it will be not just partnerships, but actually a very broad movement, which is why I'm very interested in, as I said this morning, linking EAT and the Scale Up Nutrition Sun movement, because they are dealing with much the same issues. EAT links more with health and environment, but when you talk about nutrition, as we've heard, then I think this is the way to create this broad movement. We need civil society, we need business, we need young people, we need faith communities. We need to build a movement that recognises the injustice of the impacts of climate and helps us to really be able to bring about sustainable development for future generations as well.
President Kufuor, you are engaged in a lot of topics. It's food and sanitation, water, hunger. You say that now is time for action. How and why?
I say that because there have been many pledges and promises down the years or down decades in international meetings like at the United Nations and its many multilateral agencies. Unfortunately, with the pledges, we haven't seen implementation. We haven't seen delivery on the promises from the developed world towards the developing world. On the other hand, many of the developing countries too haven't lived up to expectations. We haven't shown we've got the absorptive capacity even to use, say, delivery on pledges to some of us. So we are saying now that the whole world, through the Paris Agreement and also through the Sustainable Development Goals passed by the United Nations last year, all targeting 2030 as when to see a real break in the downward trend, saying, let us walk the talk, as the Americans say, across the board. Developed countries, developing countries, we are all committed now. We see that time is running out for humanity.
First of all, let me say that the EAT Forum comes at a very opportune time. The world is just beginning its journey on the Sustainable Development Goals. We have just come out of COP21, which by all accounts was a huge success of governments, the business community, and NGOs pulling together to set a new course for the planet and to follow that up here at the EAT Forum with the very provocative and fresh suggestion that it all boils down to food, how we produce it, how we're going to consume it towards a future when it comes to sustainability, I think goes a long way in the direction in which we're trying to move.
You're all three former presidents, and how important is it to be able to have had this position in power, and can you use it in working for those important issues?
I think having been president of your country, you take a holistic view of your own country, and you've had opportunities to see what's happening in the world. Following my time as president, I then took on a UN role as High Commissioner for Human Rights, and that made me even more aware of the interconnection between rights and gender and justice. And I think now probably one of the things that I feel we really need to do is change the way we think about financing the development we need. When we talk in the climate discussions about climate finance, the richer countries tend to think of it as kind of development aid for poor countries. But actually, we need to think about it as the way we secure the future for all of us. And it's a security of the future issue. So everybody should be prepared to encourage all the developing countries that we can to move as rapidly as possible into renewable energy. They want to do it, but the costs are high and they're not getting the investment. And that is absolutely key.
I would not only agree with what Mary has said in terms of taking a more holistic approach to this, but I would also say that our approaches perhaps are even more realistic. When one has served in public office, one is much clearer with respect to the fact that governments cannot do this by themselves. and that this is only going to be pulled forward as it can be if we build those coalitions with the business world that has become increasingly active in terms of carbon emissions and combating climate change, and of course, civil society. And it takes that kind of roundtable approach to be able to move in the direction we want. For the first time, humanity is facing this challenge, which is also the opportunity of reinventing our economy and creating jobs and opportunities for growth. But we have never traversed on this road. We have never sailed these seas. And so there's a good deal of exploration and finding the best approach as we move forward. Working together helps that type of activity.
Being a president exposes you to the necessary interconnectivity of peoples, governments, governments with corporate world, civil society. More and more, I believe we've moved into the era of humanity. So the world must hold together and empower itself to save the planet and to save the future of humanity for all of us. This is what it means, and I can't agree with them even more. They are right, of course. Presidency, and the presidents must give leadership.